Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to have our very own Jeff Pergolski from Innovia Consulting, and Jeff is going to be presenting on get the most out of your IT spending with Microsoft Azure. And I know you're all eager to get started with this presentation. So before I pass it over to Jeff, I just want to remind you that we are recording this webinar and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And if you do have any questions during our presentation, please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them addressed during our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to pass it on over to Jeff to kick off our presentation.
All right, thanks Angie, and thanks everyone for attending today. We are going to be looking and talking about Microsoft Azure. I've got my contact info on there for follow-up. As Angie said, we'll be posting the recording of this, and I'm easily searchable on Innovia.com, so feel free to reach out at jpergolski@Innovia.com if you've got any questions. So we are going to start with this is for those of you who are really plugged into the Microsoft channel. This is not the Azure icon that you are used to seeing. They announced, I think it was just on Friday, that this is going to be the new Azure icon. Microsoft loves to keep switching things up, so this is their new icon. So Azure, what is Azure? Why do you care, and how can you save money with it? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I would say that this is, I will try to keep the IT jargon and acronyms, etc., to a minimum, but it's sort of a necessary evil of talking about things in this space. Mostly what we are going to focus on today is the Azure as an infrastructure virtual machine hosting scenario, because that is where most of our users are leveraging Azure. But Azure is a platform that can do just about anything. So I'm going to go through, I've got a medium-sized slide deck. We're going to go through those slides and touch on some points related to budget and IT spend. And then I'm just going to jump into a couple of the Azure resources that Microsoft has out on the web for a little bit more information. So that will be my loose agenda at this point. Azure started, let's see, it was announced first in 2008, formally released in February of 2010. So Azure is over 11 years old now. Feels like just the other day that I was getting to start to play with it, but that's a good place to jump in. And my first experience with Azure was to provision some Minecraft servers. So I started to play around with Azure when my son was into playing Minecraft for PC. And he'd always complain that his computer wasn't powerful enough to run the mods he wanted to play on, and he'd send me links to computers that he'd design and would cost somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000, and I was like, no way, kid, we are not spending this much money for you to play games. But then I thought, you know, Azure has these really easily deployable virtual machines where I could build a computer with the specs that he wanted online on Microsoft's Azure platform, and maybe we could use that. So I signed up for a free Azure account to get the $200 Azure credit, and I deployed an Azure VM that had enough horsepower to let him remote into it and play his games. And then after a few months, he would burn through that $200 credit, and then I'd sign up for a new Azure account with a new $200 credit. Should probably disclose this is not a best practice, but you know, I was still maybe uncertain about how far I could go with Azure, so I signed up for a few more $200 credits. And then I'd use the Azure tools to when the when my trial was going to end, I'd use the Azure tools to export the virtual machine that I'd created with all the specs and the installed software, and I'd import it into my new Azure instance, and it was great. Until Microsoft stopped accepting my phone number for verification. When you set up a new trial account, you've got to give them a business email and a phone number. Apparently I'd used mine too many times, so then I had to start using my kids' phone numbers to get around that. And about that time, my son was growing out of Minecraft and into other stuff, so it worked out perfectly. But that was my first experience with Azure, and in terms of building up virtual machines that could take high demand scenarios, and then when they weren't being used, they could be put to sleep and not cost me anything. It was a really good use case for that. From there, I moved on to using Azure virtual machines deployed in geographically advantageous regions to run my bots to acquire sneakers to add to my sneaker collection. For those of you who aren't familiar with the sneaker game, companies like Nike and Adidas schedule drops of highly in-demand shoes at a specific time, usually Saturday mornings about 9 a.m. Central, where hundreds of thousands or millions of people like me are trying to buy these shoes that there are only a few thousand pair of. So a bot is an automated script that puts the SKU in your cart and checks you out faster than any human can do. The fastest bots run on machines with lots of virtual resources and almost zero latency because of their connection to the internet. So I would build a really powerful Azure virtual machine, turn it on 15 minutes before the shoes were to go on sale, and then run my script on it, see if I was able to buy any or not, and then turn the machine off right after, which would allow me to extend again that $200 credit for a long time. So sort of the point of these stories is that there are unlimited reasons to look at Azure as a platform, and what is the reason that most businesses look at? It is certainly economic pressure. So when we say economic pressure, we're talking about the point in time where we have to buy new servers or new licensing. Some of these questions that pop up here, like running your own data center. Is IT a core strength of our organization? Do we have a great IT team? Do we have an IT team whose resources could be better utilized in a more strategic way, helping run the business in other directions rather than maintaining servers, keeping their eye on backups, keeping the network secure, etc. So these are the concerns that oftentimes lead companies to look at Azure. And essentially what we are talking about is moving infrastructure from your own server room to the Azure platform. And so the different ways that and the different triggers that we've got cash flow challenges. So do we have enough money to buy a $50,000 server with the licensing that's required there? From a security standpoint, cybersecurity threats. Can we protect our servers? Do we have the expertise, and can we afford to protect our servers to the same point as an enterprise like Microsoft can? Do we have budget resource constraints? Do we have room in our server environment, in our rack? Do we have enough licensing or virtual resources in our virtual infrastructure to add the new servers that we need? Maybe there's a contract that's expiring. Do we have business continuity? What happens if our server room goes down? What happens if our main location loses power? Will we still, will our satellite locations be able to still do business and transact? So these are some of the migration triggers that get our customers thinking about moving to the cloud. And then the idea of how can migrating to the cloud help? Certainly, first and foremost, flipping Capex to OpEx and only paying as you consume is a huge advantage. So capital expenditures, buying servers and licensing, rather than just paying for the operating expense of using what you actually need, is probably the greatest value statement in thinking about moving to Azure. But the other things that shouldn't be overlooked is being able to enhance your organization's security. The idea that it used to be, maybe 10 years ago when we were having cloud conversations with our customers, they were concerned about, well, I don't know how I feel about my data existing somewhere out on the cloud, and how can I be sure that it is secure? And that sort of paradigm has switched now. Now we've got customers asking us about, can we afford to keep our infrastructure safe and secure in our own environment? Like, there's been so many ransomware attacks. Actually, just that's been in the news over the weekend, but the fuel system on the East Coast being hacked by a ransomware group. So the idea that certainly Microsoft isn't exempt from hacks, but the idea that your data in an Azure infrastructure that is provisioned just for you has a lot more security and control in it than what most organizations can afford to implement on their own. So the idea of improved security in the cloud is something that is a paradigm that has switched over the last 10 years. And then last but not least, the idea of, I think the fancy term we use is elasticity, but the idea that you can scale to what's needed and focus on what matters. So if you are seasonal, you have a seasonal aspect to your business model, and you add dozens of users around the holidays or maybe over the summer, being on an Azure platform allows you just to scale up to what that demand is that you need for the first for that time period, and then turn that demand off, rather than buying extra capacity or designing extra capacity in your hardware to accommodate that, and then using only a small percentage of that. So the migrating to Azure efficiently on your own terms is a huge consideration. We've got Azure has a really comprehensive mix of technology, best practice guidance, programs, offers, and tools, all to help you migrate your entire data center to the cloud, or specific servers or specific workloads. That the fact that all of that exists means that you've got some you can have confidence that you can optimize your costs without any risk. And the idea that you can run in a hybrid environment, that Microsoft, since Server 2012, that server operating system has had baked into the server OS the ability to back up to Azure, to coexist on their platform, along with on-premise. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. You can migrate proprietary or open source databases. It doesn't just have to be Microsoft virtual machines, but you've got all kinds of security controls. A lot of the tools that IT has on their in their current environment exist in Azure, so we're not having to do a whole lot of retraining. And if there is training needed, of course, Microsoft has a really robust learning platform for getting your IT staff familiar with what Azure can do and how to do things on Azure. So the from a security standpoint, really, I think Microsoft offers unmatched security. as well as built-in resiliency. So that you can take advantage of multi-layered hybrid security in Azure. Just some of the notes around that. Microsoft has 3,500 security experts that are responsible and tasked with maintaining security, plotting, planning, and monitoring security on Azure. They spend $1 billion a year just on security in Azure. $1 billion a year with a B. So obviously security is important to them, and they are delivering with resources that and it seems like anything that has happened Azure related that has been a hiccup on their platform usually has more to do with someone forgetting to renew a certificate than it and one of these administrative tasks than it does with someone gaining access. But 58 different regions and growing. I think that might be up into the 60s by now. My data might be a few months old. So 58 different regions. We're going to get into that here in a minute. 150 different virtual machine sizes. So you can be sure that you can pick you don't have to pick an oversized machine. You can find a virtual machine that is exactly what you need without paying any extra. So that scaling your applications and your workloads on demand, it's going to be easy for you to do that. Next, and this is, I think, one of the more important slides here, but where are we talking about saving money? So number one, you can save up to 80% using the Azure Hybrid benefit. The Azure Hybrid benefit is included in, and if any of you have Microsoft licensing agreements on your server operating systems that include software assurance, those software assurance benefits include an Azure Hybrid benefit, which means that you can save up to 80% on Azure hosting fees. So again, that's a huge advantage for those of you with software assurance. Azure is up to 5 times less than Amazon Web Services, especially for virtual desktops and SQL licensing. We'll get into that in a minute. And then actually Microsoft has spent some time, and this is something that's often overlooked, but up to a 25% increase in productivity of IT staff around Azure, because so much of the Azure platform is automated. It takes a lot of the day-to-day tasks of an IT team off their plate and allows them to be more efficient. So 25% increase in productivity. $10 million savings from avoided on-prem infrastructure and staff costs. So here we're getting back into that idea of buying a excess capacity so that you've got what you need at your peak demand, and then having that sit idle when you're not at your peak demand. And just unfortunately what happens is that we spend a lot of money planning for the worst or maybe best case scenario in terms of demand, and then we end up spending more than we actually have to. And based on all of those numbers, a 478% 3-year return on investment. So there you see if you can see really, if you've got really good eyes or a really big monitor, you can see down near the bottom of the screen where those notes come from. But there is data to support all of these claims, and that's from obviously the bigger the IT infrastructure, the bigger the business, the more dramatic the savings can be. But we have found in our own customer base that these numbers play out, and that we are helping our customers save all kinds of money and run in more secure ways by using Azure regardless of the size. We've got some small organizations that jumped in 5 or 6 years ago, are still running strong on Azure, and every day we've got more and more companies that are interested in it. So one of the things in terms of optimizing costs that we want to look at is how do we save money during an Azure migration, and how is that then what's different post migration. So some of the things that you can use during the migration, we can help using the Azure total cost of ownership calculator to figure out some approximate costs, using the right size Azure Migrate resources in the assessment guide. We're going to look at some screenshots from what that Azure Migrate toolkit looks like. But again, there are tools that exist now to help us design the system that we need and have some very accurate costs associated with the migration, and how much they're going to cost, how much the infrastructure is going to cost on a monthly basis. And then post-migration, there's best practice recommendations through the Azure Advisor, which again is an automated process that will help you recognize when you can shut machines down based on your users and when they're using them. If you've got different servers that are serving different groups or different functional areas within your organization, there are the Azure Advisor helps you automate the processes of shutting machines down or ramping them up quickly. So there are savings during the migration, and then there are savings and tools post migration that we can take advantage of. So here is we're just looking at a typical data center cost structure, where on-prem cost here we've got the server hardware, that's 50% of the total cost. We've got the building, which again we've got some real estate, that 15% of the cost. Power, people, and network make up the balance of that on-premise cost. And then the data center capacity, we've got maybe 60% of the data center capacity and 30% unreserved. And the reduced lead time and elasticity frees up excess capacity. So when we look at server capacity, servers being idle 70% of the time, only utilized 30% of the time. This is the on-premise Capex model compared to the cloud operating expense model. So again, just using and designing exactly what we need when we need it, and not paying for anything more. So obviously, the 100% on-prem capacity, that line just stays there. But the three different scenarios here. First of all, going from the top down, C indicates the unused capacity and extra usage. If that's rarely, if ever, used. That provides immediate savings because we're not going to have to design a server and buy one that works at peak demand or is designed to work at peak demand, even though we rarely hit that. Point B shows fluctuations on top of the base workload, so seasonal patterns or occasional bursts. The fact that Azure has hourly pricing for the hours or days needed. In a pay-as-you-go model, we can hit those numbers, and then the very base workloads, the steady state, the point that we know we need virtual machines to act maybe as our domain controller or to host our ERP application or our database or maybe a custom application. We can use reserved instances to pay for those Azure services, and then get the up to a 72% discount on those reservations. And so the idea that we work with the Azure toolkit, work with a partner like Innovia, someone who's got some experience working with Azure, to help you design a solution that takes advantage of and optimizes the savings. So maybe we tell you, okay, these are the VMs that we know you need. If we buy these through Azure reservations, either a 1 or 3 year prepay, we can get a 72% discount on those Azure VM fees, and then all we're paying for is the utilization above base. And we can do that in a pay-as-you-go model, and that way we're not overbuying anything, and we're only paying for usage. So, so the idea of planning that out, of working with a partner that can help you connect all the dots, is a really important step in understanding how to save the most money. We mentioned on an earlier slide that you can pay less with Azure, and that Amazon Web Services is 5 times more expensive. Here they've got some budgets. They've got some data here about SQL infrastructure as a service performance benchmark, where they compared running on Azure. There are certainly advantages that Microsoft has over other competition in this space, because of what they have been doing in the in terms of including things in the base server operating system that make it less expensive to run on Azure, and here you see it's both performing faster as well as being less expensive. That's a specific use case around SQL, but SQL is a pretty popular application. And let's see here. We've just got a few customer success stories. Komatsu, that 49% cost reduction and a 25 to 30% performance gain. Capstone Mining, eliminating a huge chunk of capital cost. And so these ideas, again, these are big organizations and big numbers, but these numbers scale, and if if you could save $100,000 of IT spend, or $50,000 on a new server, and you could deploy something to the cloud and start to take advantage of all the design and cost savings of Azure Reserved Instance, etc. You can, like, every dollar counts. Something else to understand, again, those numbers: $1 billion of annual investment, 3,500 plus security experts, and trillions of signals analyzed for intelligence. You can be confident that when considering Azure, that you are looking at a really robust, secure platform. So the multi-layered security control, all of these different ways. See at the bottom: Azure Sentinel, Azure Security Center, Azure Active Directory, which just about all of our customers on Azure use, Azure Key Vault, and then Azure Firewall, and denial of service protection. So there are products within the Azure stack that are specifically there to protect, and you can rely on Microsoft as a as a trusted partner in this space, obviously, with the amount of resources that they are dedicating to just maintaining a secure environment. So the Azure hybrid model, where we've got we're combining. You can see on the left, you can bring Azure services to any infrastructure. It doesn't just have to be an on-premise infrastructure, but Microsoft has partnered with VMware, with Google Cloud, as well as Amazon Web Services, that to sort of bring the Azure hybrid innovation, so you can have their Azure Arc. I'm trying to think of what the right word for that is. I guess that a toolkit offering as a service to bring multiple infrastructures together and then manage them in a single plane. The ability to sort of add Azure Artificial Intelligence to edge devices, extended with the Azure Internet of Things platform. So being able to read information from machinery on the production floor and gather that data and bring it in somewhere using Azure IoT devices. That is something really cool that we are just starting to see in the small to medium-sized business sector, those advantages and what you can do with that. the idea that you can ensure business continuity, and that's done through through one-click backups. You've got Azure Site Recovery, you've got Azure Virtual WAN or Wide Area Network. So being able to recreate your network over Microsoft's Azure with high availability, financially backed SLAs, so that you're at 99.9 or 99.95% availability is something that we haven't that's really hard to match for us in the small to medium sized business space. So and these are all built-in solutions. We don't need to have programming. We don't need to have necessarily IT expertise beyond understanding what's possible. And when working with a Microsoft partner, it's a really strong value statement that you've got people looking out for your best interest, and providing a really secure, agile platform. We're going to pop through a couple slides here quickly. Another customer success story. This one's from the Ottawa Hospital, talking about how they were able to save a lot of money on Azure. Their Epic system, which for those of us in Wisconsin is a software company that we're familiar with. So being able to cut down on just backups for some organizations is enough of a reason to move part of that to Azure. This next slide here is I think it's the most current map we've got of the Azure region. So you can see 60 different regions worldwide. There's a few announced regions in Europe. We've got 130,000 miles of fiber and subsea cable, 160 different edge sites, and then there's 200 plus express route partners that Microsoft is relying on. If we kind of zoom in, assuming that most of our attendees today are in the United States, you can see the different regions of Azure. So when we are deploying an Azure solution for you, we're going to pick an Azure region that makes sense to minimize latency, to get it as close as we can to your organization. And something that not everyone is familiar with is that because of these Azure resources, the fact that they're geographically diverse also means that they cost different for a VM that exists in the West, on the West Coast or on the East Coast, compared to a VM that exists in the Central or North Central region. The North Central region is I think in the US anyway, is the least expensive location to host Azure. So those numbers are based on obviously supply and demand, and things like electricity, internet connection, those things matter. And so depending on where you're located, when you are looking at Azure VMs, it's important to understand that, and working with a partner that can help get you accurate costs from the beginning of the project is something that's important. And so keep in mind that that where you are matters in terms of some of the pricing around Azure. All right, so taking advantage of the Resilient Azure Foundation. Here we've got the design and the operation side of Microsoft's investment in Azure, and then Observe. So there are people that are monitoring Azure and looking at service health events. The team on the right of the Azure, that Azure team is specifically they're testing failover. They're doing what they call fault injection, which is trying to break Azure and then making sure that they've got failover properly configured for the major regions, and so that when you move your data there, you know that all of these things are being done. And that's one of the sort of the, I guess, the dirty secrets of IT as it relates to maybe backup and disaster recovery. We spend a lot of time, energy, and money getting these, designing these backup solutions, and then and disaster recovery solutions, and then oftentimes we don't go through because it's might be really difficult in our SMB scenario to test that failover, and so we just our hope and we hope that that we've got enough resources to restart, that our downtime is what the system design downtime is, and we don't run into any hiccups, that we're missing some capacity somewhere, so we don't really do true testing. Microsoft has people that are testing their system all the time, and specific teams just trying to break it. So you can be sure that you've got that confidence, knowing that Microsoft is doing far more than most IT teams can do to from a capacity standpoint to test the solution. And then looking at the idea that every workload is that we can cover every workload in Microsoft Azure. So everywhere from the entry level up to the quantum, we've got virtual machines, as I said, in like 250 or 250 different sizes of VMs out of the box. Those can be configured with standard hard disk drives, solid state drives, and then premium and ultra disk. So depending on what sort of demand we have, we can design a solution on Azure that matches exactly what it needs to. And then also that there are not just Windows or SQL Server, but Linux, and then VMware, SAP, and NetApp. So Microsoft has these because there's a huge amount of VMware virtual infrastructures that you can bring your existing VMware skills to Azure via the Azure VMware solution. So using the same hypervisor virtual machine management platform to run in Azure, the same as it's running in your existing VMware environment, is a real cost savings and efficiency gain. Also, just being able to move the Windows virtual desktop, whether it's Windows 10 or a Windows Server, they scale. And like, okay, we're just going to sign up. It used to be, well, we design a remote desktop or a virtual desktop environment for a certain number of users, and then after that we need to load balance and design another machine. On Azure, all of that's automated and taken care of for you, so really efficient process. And then something that we didn't really talk much of, but Azure App Service. So if you've got web applications that you want to be able to scale, you can use Azure App Service and again take advantage of the true cloud play with elasticity and designing for peak demand, but only paying for what you use. Of course, SQL, there's SQL workloads. There's a number of different ways to run SQL in Azure, and we can do the same. We can have the same control of SQL in Azure as we do on-prem. Little tagline there that Azure knows SQL best. Whether we're running in the IaaS or infrastructure as a service, or the PaaS platform as a service, Azure and SQL are really getting to the point where it is there's a huge value statement around what you can do with SQL on Azure because of the flexibility. some customer success stories, and we are almost to the end of my slides here. Let me just get through a couple of the different sort of migration projects that that we could have. These are all sort of infrastructure-led server, SQL, dev and test, web apps, and then if you've got some virtualized workloads that you're looking to, all of these are common migration projects. Last point I wanted to make, and I'll get through these line of business ones, is that basically Microsoft has the tools available to help analyze and make you feel good about the choice of moving to the cloud. So I wanted to get to this slide. So there's the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, and that is the guidance that that partners like Innovia have worked with Microsoft in developing these tools and a framework for understanding how to move to the cloud. So we're starting with this cloud adoption framework. From there, we've got the Azure migration program and the fast track for Azure. So again, Microsoft will, depending on the size of your project, Microsoft will get involved with helping you connect with Azure engineers that can make specific recommendations for different use cases. And then finally, we've got Azure Migrate, Azure Lighthouse, and Azure Arc that are the tools for automating and driving that efficiency. In some cases, you can move to Azure as easily as installing an Azure migration server in your infrastructure and having it start to copy and replicate things behind the scenes, and provision these machines after you've decided how you want to pay for them. It's a really flexible and powerful tool. There's we've got the defining strategy and planning, and we've got all so not only do we have a great product in Azure, but we've got the tools to migrate as well. And no migration is ever linear or simple. So we've got all of these fast tracks, and Microsoft has these tools. The Azure migration platform has really everything from starting with the framework, but technical skill building is a part of this, so making sure your staff is ready. There's a bunch of free tools that Microsoft gives you that makes it really easy to move to the cloud. And then from there, it is, we've got the whole Microsoft team of engineers, as well as specialized partners that will help you to get there. So I think that is, we'll just do one more look here before we leave. So the Azure Migrate is the tool set that we use to sort of get ready for seeing if your infrastructure is ready. And what happens is that we start with a migration assessment that gives you, and that's part of the SMART toolkit, but it actually gives you a score based on, are you ready for the cloud or not? We like to see you in the green, which is a 7 to 10 score. And then if you look over on the right, it will tell you, the different areas. So business strategy, partner support, discovery. And we go through and after filling out some of these forms in the SMART toolkit, there, Microsoft gives us a grade to tell you if they think you're ready to move to the cloud or not. Now, this would be more a project for an overall migration of an entire infrastructure. We can certainly work in smaller progress to bite off smaller bites to look at some of the specific use cases where they're, instead of buying a server that you're doing that you're using just for backups, maybe, what can we use for backups in Azure? And then we start to look at what operating systems you've got in your existing infrastructure, and can we take advantage of any licensing savings? So again, we've got a great product, and we've got all the tools that really make moving to the cloud really efficient. and the different migration strategies that we've got. I think about, we'll just pop through the different scenarios here, and then I think looking at this was Microsoft's as Microsoft adopted Azure for their own internal needs. This is the sort of where they found their strategies at, and there were still less than 5%. If you look at the bottom of this funnel here, there were less than 5% of the applications had to remain on premise for some reason, and that's always a possibility. But the majority of the 95% of their application infrastructure could move to Azure. So now I'm going to end my slideshow. I'm just going to take you through some of the free Azure resources that we can get to here. And let's see. I want to make sure that one of the things that we want to focus on, and I'm just going to here I'm at azure.microsoft.com. I'm looking at the Azure Reserved Instance, and it gets into more cloud, less cost, all of the benefits of Azure in a reserved instance. So seeing that up to 80% savings with reserved instance and Azure hybrid benefit over pay-as-you-go. And this is an important website as well, azure.microsoft.com, free. So what can you get for free on Azure? And so again, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation the $200 free credit that you can get when you sign up. You also can get up to 12 months of popular free services when you sign up for an Azure account. This $200 credit is a 30-day trial, and then there are 25 plus Azure services that are always free. So looking at what can I do with my free account, personalized experiences with artificial intelligence, drive innovation for existing and future apps. So deploying VMs that would do it, maybe something that you don't have the capacity in your existing infrastructure, but it's a great way to dip your toe in the water of Azure and find out what it's all about, signing up for a free Azure resource, and then building scalable apps and future releases. So that idea here is the as we scroll down here, which products are free for 12 months. So you can get a Linux B1S standard tier. You can get 750 hours of that over the course of 12 months. Same in the Windows virtual machine. There's some managed disks, blob storage, SQL databases, VPN gateway, like all of this. If we expand to see the full list, we've got computer vision and AI learning. For any of you that saw Chad Williams present on his Power App, he was using some artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision to count some things. So these are just these are the services, and then these are as we scroll further down the page, I can click this link and see these are products that are always free. So you can get an idea here of the amount of resources that certainly it pays to consider as you look at Azure. There is and then once you sign up for these free accounts, you can read the FAQ about it. But all of this information, there's just a ton of it, and this page goes on and on. That in terms of the exact offers that you can get for free, to sort of just understand what's possible in Azure. And I guess that's the ultimately, like, how can you save money? Getting back to the title of this presentation, you've got a great product that allows you to save on infrastructure costs by giving you a flexible platform that's more secure than what you can offer in your own data center for the most part. And then you've got tools that make it really efficient to move your infrastructure to Azure. So you've got efficient tools, you've got a great, secure, cost-effective platform, and then you've also got a bunch of free offers that allow you to to take it for a test drive before you've done anything. Starting with an Azure backup account, or maybe turning on Azure Active Directory and syncing with your own Active Directory from a security perspective to start giving your users a single sign-on experience when you start to use Azure with Microsoft or Office 365. You've got integrated authentication, and everything just starts to work better together. So a huge amount of resources out there as well. You've got through the Microsoft Learn platform. I have spent a lot of time going through the Azure training over the past 6 months to get my skills up. I've got certification on Azure Internet of Things, an Azure IoT certification that I passed. Actually, I think that was about a year ago, but Azure is constantly growing. There's so much that you can do with it, and really, really cool stuff. So I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to certainly take a look at that. And to, if you've got questions and this all seems overwhelming, reach out to your partner, to your account manager for our Innovia customers who are listening today, and they can put you in touch with our team of technology consultants that are experts and have been working in Azure as long as I have, for 10 plus years, and we're happy to start a conversation and help you understand if Azure is a good fit for your organization. So I have been talking a lot, Angie. There's I guess just a little over 5 minutes left. So are there any questions that have come in?
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, we do have a couple of questions. With regards to scaling Azure and additional security controls, if subscribing to BC SaaS, is it recommended to add to what comes with it?
Let's see. That's a great question, and as a member of the sales team, I love giving sales answers to that. I would say that, first of all, our technology consultants would have a better answer on that, but I would say out of the box, 95% of our BC SaaS customers don't have a business use case for anything above the standard implementation, and in terms of scale and security. So everything that comes out of the box with BC is enough security for them. Certainly, if there's a use case that is different than that, we're happy to explore those options. But I would say that out of the box is what is recommended, and what most of our by far the most of our customers are using.
Okay, thank you. If anybody else has any further questions that you want to have Jeff address, please put them in the questions box, and we can get them answered for you. I've got a couple more questions that came through. Do we have to move all of our servers to Azure if we want to get out of the cloud? Or I'm sorry, if we want to go to the cloud?
Let's see. So you don't have to. We've got a couple customers that have gone all in and moved everything there, but by far the majority of Azure users are moving part of their infrastructure, oftentimes one server at a time. They start with a specific use case of something like a backup server and move it, and so you can move, especially with the Azure hybrid deployment scenarios. that's a great way to only move part of your infrastructure and take advantage of using as much of your existing infrastructure as it still makes sense. And then also the idea that Azure Active Directory is a great bridge to start to combine your existing Active Directory and Windows infrastructure with Azure, so you can move one server, two servers, or just move like an application and a platform like Azure Active Directory. So you don't have to do it all at once. You can take small steps to start down the path to Azure.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other question that we had that came through was, does Microsoft offer any special pricing for nonprofits?
Yes. Let's see. So the current offering right now is for qualified nonprofits. Microsoft gives a and I'm just looking up here and dragging this over. $3,500 of Azure Services credits per year. So how you choose to spend that is up to you. There's certainly a process of being approved as a nonprofit and then obtaining that Azure credit. But absolutely, it used to. That's relatively new. I think that's something that's in the last maybe 2 to 3 years that gives nonprofits $3,500 of Azure credits per year. So definitely, if you're a nonprofit, talk to your partner about that and look to take advantage of it.
All right, Jeff, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have for you today. Thank you for presenting.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. And again, if you've got questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me. And thanks, Angie.
All right. Well, and thank you everyone for joining us today, or if you're watching on demand, thank you for taking the time out to watch this. And I want to let you know that we have started more of our training workshops. So if you're interested in attending any of our workshops, please visit Innovia.com/workshops for more information and to register for the training workshop that fits your role. And we do have more webinars coming up. This afternoon, we have Jason Parker from Lease Query, who will be presenting on understanding the new lease accounting standards. And tomorrow, May 12th, we have Scott Rich from I-95 Dev presenting on, is your e-commerce platform keeping up in today's fast-changing world? So check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's Innovia.com/events. And Innovia has a podcast. If you haven't heard of it already, it's called the Innovia Conversation, which Jeff Pergolski is one of our hosts, along with Steve Waltz. And we just want to encourage you to check out our podcast page and select the podcast platform so that way you can get the new episodes that come out. So check out Innovia.com/podcast for more information on those various podcasts that we have done for you. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar.
All right,
Take care, everyone.